Good morning and welcome to this month's Free Friday webinar. My name is Michelle Mott, and this month's topic is called Links to Leadership. We did that intentionally because this week the Solheim Cup is starting and being held here in Des Moines, Iowa at the Des Moines Golf and Country Club. For those of you who may not be familiar with what Solheim Cup is, it's the women professional golfers that are playing to represent both America and Europe in a format like the Ryder Cup. So it's not a typical round of professional golf. They're actually in team events, and today was the first day. So whether you're a golfer or not, I think you'll have some fun. We did this during the first hour from 9 to 10 o'clock, and we got a lot of really great participation. And so we hope that you will learn not only about the game of golf, but more importantly, how you can strengthen your leadership skills. For those of you who may not be familiar with this platform, WebEx is a way in which you can watch the PowerPoint presentation, and there's some control panels there that you can either zoom in or zoom out and watch the entire presentation on your computer screen, or I know in some cases we have clients that are pulling together employees in a training room or a boardroom and have a group go through this as a in-service. And if at any time you want to contribute during some chats, there is a column off to the right-hand side where you can actually see a listing of the participants that have logged in, and then there's also a chat area. And when I ask if you wouldn't be so kind to type in a response and then send it to myself, and I'll read your responses to everyone. And Lynn will go for it. All righty, so a little bit about Inspiring Solutions. For now over 25 years, we have used this Keystone model to improve our clients' culture in the area of strategic planning, leadership and team development, hiring and onboarding, attitudes, and sales and customer service. If you want to learn more about how we do that, feel free to request our new talent development catalog, which describes all of our programs, our inspiring keynotes that oftentimes we will speak at association conferences. We have a variety of tools, assessments, books, turnkey training kits that you can actually use on your own to either create or enhance your training programs. And you can call us and we'll be happy to send you a copy of it, or you can actually download a copy off our website, inspiringsolutions.com. The goals for this hour is to use the webinar platform to deliver some monthly motivation and expose you to one of our inspiring programs and our products. This particular month, we have sent you 4 resources, and they were attached to the instructions. There's the Links to Leadership handout. There is the Links to Leadership program description. There is the invitation to next month's certification on attitudes in the workplace. And then we always send the ongoing schedule of our upcoming webinars. After you close out of this webinar, you'll be asked to complete a brief survey to offer us comments, and I value and appreciate your honest feedback on what you enjoyed about the topic or the process itself, as well as suggestions for future topics. We will be putting together our calendar for the first half of 2018 here within the next month or so. So we're welcoming and encouraging your ideas or your needs to identify future topics. One of the handouts, as I mentioned, is the flyer that describes our webinar and certification schedule, and we thank you for signing up so well in advance. I think we had several of our registrants sign up for the entire year, and we send out typically a couple weeks beforehand a reminder and a registration link. We appreciate you sending it along to your coworkers or friends or anyone who would have an interest and could value from this education. It is repeated twice, so we do it so that we can honor people's schedules from the 9 o'clock hour and the 10:30 Central Standard Time. This particular webinar, we are going to have some fun exploring the difference between leaders and golfers and learn how they manage PAR, which is an acronym that stands for People, Attitude, and Resources. So for starters, what I'd like you to do is use the chat box, and in the chat box, send to either the panelists or the host. Either way, either Dana, Sarah, and I will respond to you on what is the objective of the leadership game. It's one of the questions on the handout. And what I'd like you to do is think about what, if leadership is a game, what would be the objective? So in the game of golf, for instance, the objective is to take the fewest shots to get the ball into the cup. The objective of bowling is to strike down as many pins as possible in 10 frames. Game of golf is made up of 18 holes. So I'd like for you to give me your best shot at what you think the objective or the purpose of the leadership game is. The other question is, what do you enjoy most about the game of leadership? That could be anything from, I enjoy the game of golf and leadership because of the challenge. I feel like it's a great way to tap into my skills and challenge my mind. All right, so we're starting to get some responses in. The objective is to do more with less. Thank you. And again, when you send your messages, you can send them to all participants or to the host and presenter. Rita says the purpose is to bring the team together and move in the same direction. Thank you. Hey, Rex. Rex says to know which club or tools to use, and we're going to talk about that from a resource perspective. I'll give you a little bit more time, and then we'll move on. Patricia, thank you, is to have the least amount of challenges. And obviously, sometimes we can't avoid the challenges, and at least being able to identify and resolve them. All right, so with that in mind, let's move now into some of the things that we wrote about in a new booklet called Links to Leadership, Strategies for Professionals Who Golf. I co-wrote a chapter in an anthology with Steve Rutledge, and we've recently revised it, and it's now a standalone booklet. And if you'd like, feel free. It's a nice, quick, easy read for $5. You can order it off our website, and maybe you've got a golfer friend or a family member. It makes a great gift. So we've covered the objective of the game of golf. What do you enjoy most about the game of leadership? I'd like for you to think about it from the standpoint of when you are involved with leadership, what do you enjoy most? And again, use the chat box and type in what that means to you. Have a winning team. Thank you, Patricia. And we'll talk about what does winning mean to you and what does it mean to your team. To have the east, I'm sorry, so that comment about the least challenges was referring to what you enjoy most. Exactly. Thank you. Seeing great team performance and wins for our patients. Thank you, Rita, from Dundee. Awesome. So what is the difference between a manager and a leader? Some of you may have leader or supervisor or manager in your title. And what I'd like to do is give you a working understanding of the difference between a manager and a leader and ask you to think about which are you. First of all, a manager is someone who follows directions from leaders. So in most organizations, there are levels of leadership. In other words, you might have a C-suite, or you call it the executive team, or it might be the administrative council. There's a variety of different ways that our clients refer to that upper level of management. You might then be referred to as middle management. Your role or your title might be department head, might be supervisor, and it's your job to make sure that you honor their direction by utilizing the resources, which could be your team, your tools, your equipment, technology, to organize and implement the plans that oftentimes are given to you, or in some cases you might be involved with creating those plans. A manager tends to be a little bit more practical and analytical than a leader because they're responsible for the day-to-day operation and acting in the present. In other words, making sure that the priorities for the day are being executed. On the other hand, a leader is someone who provides direction, creates the vision, and tends to help the team expand its resources. In other words, not only utilizing what's currently available, but might identify some gaps in either the tools or the teams and helps to make sure that they are provided or available. They tend to be the visionary in creating the plans, or at least making sure that the plans are established. Different than the manager, they can be a little bit impractical and apply some creativity or change management in hopes to or in preparation for the future. So my question to you is, which are you? Do you see yourself in your day more in a management role or in a leadership role? Or in some cases, are you a combination? And if you would, type that into the chat box, please. All right, Rita believes that it's a combination. Seeing combination incoming in from Rex as well. So most of you probably are not a pure leader or a pure manager. My guess is that you have days and qualities of both, and so too does Stephanie. All right, thank you. So if you were to take a look at the leader and his or her relationship with their team, there are two different approaches. You might be a leader that creates a culture or a team that is focused on others. So that means that as a leader, your authority is most important. Oftentimes because you want to make sure that you have control, sometimes your team might either resent having to comply with what you're asking of them, or in some cases they might even rebel or resist being directed or controlled. As a result of either, you could feel as though a culture has more of a victim approach, or the mentality that we have to do something, and in some cases, in an extreme, might be that they take revenge. They start to not only resent or resist, but they start to kind of seek revenge on leadership because they feel as though they are not in control. The other style of leadership creates more of a self-directed team. This team oftentimes feels much more autonomous, much more engaged because they feel as though they have more control over their outcome or can create a solution. As a result, they tend to agree and accept the direction because of the fact they have a voice. And even if they disagree or there might be a consequence of not complying, they at least ultimately feel much more responsible and have the freedom to their day. They have much more of an attitude that they can choose to comply or choose to follow along. With that as an overview, I'd like us to now think about what is leadership. Dwight D. Eisenhower said that leadership is the art of getting someone else to do something you want done because he or she wants to do it. You know, and that really takes the craft of leadership to understand what matters most to your team members and position the task or the assignment in a way as though they feel as though it's going to be something exciting and something appropriate to use their talents. Another definition that I oftentimes use, it's the ability to inspire people to achieve desired results. So let's take a look at, are leaders born or is leadership learned? I'd like for you to type in the chat box how you feel about that. Is it something that you are born with, or is it something that you could learn? or in many cases, it might be a combination of both. All right, we've got Patricia, feeling as though it's something that's learned from our experiences, and yes, learning from your childhood to school. Stephanie, feeling as though it's a combination of both. Rita, feeling as though if it is born, it could definitely be learned. So, and I think it probably is a degree, a combination. I oftentimes think about my ancestors or my parents as being instrumental in my role. And we're going to talk about here in a minute who you feel as though you respect as a leader and what you've learned from them. So when we break down and focus in on a leader is someone who is able to inspire the attitudes and actions of others. As the attitude adjuster, I know that there's a great correlation between people's attitudes and their actions. I think oftentimes in order to change someone's actions, you've got to learn how to understand and influence their attitudes. Because if you want any long-term, lasting change of behavior, it's got to come from what they think about. And then the other definition I oftentimes use from leaders comes from the notion that leaders help people get things done through others. When we talk about everything DISC or the DISC as assessment tool, it measures to what degree are you interested in others and to what degree are you interested in getting things done. And I think a leader is able to blend a combination of both of those. What I'd like us to do again is in the chat box, type in who you admire as a leader. Now these could be famous world leaders, they could be alive, they could be deceased, or they could even be someone who has affected you through your life, a family member, a friend, it could be a boss, a teacher. And I'd like you to just write down their name. Some of these people we may or may not know, because if they're obviously someone in your life, we may not know them. But I'd like you to just be aware of and type in who do you admire as a leader. All right, we've got a couple. We have Ava, who is Debbie's grandmother. We have Martha Reardon, which might be a family member. A mother, Michelle Obama. Oh, we've got the team at Inspiring Solutions. Thank you. Harry Truman. All right, good. My sister. All right. President Kennedy. Great. Oh, yes, Rex, I remember you were a big fan of President Kennedy. So here's what I'd like you to do now, is think about what have you learned from them. As I'm sharing with you mine, I'd like for you to type in the chat box, what then did you feel you learned from those leaders? My mom's motto was dare to be different. She was an art teacher. My dad, growing up on a farm, hard, honest worker. Jerry Hart was one of my college professors, encouraged us to enjoy what we do. Dan Schneider, my first, he actually saw skills in me that I didn't see in myself, because in HR you have to learn how to earn respect, not popularity. All right, so I'm seeing yours starting to come in. Strengths and keeping grounded, important. Thank you, Patricia. Others, Rex, how to inspire people and give the feeling of hope and confidence even in times of great despair. Yeah. My grandfather was a business owner. He had a barbershop, and I think I not only learned skills about being a business owner from him, but he also taught me the game of golf. And so I oftentimes admired his craft. Rita, you can do this. So great. Well, here's the notion. Not only recognize what you learned or are continuing to learn from those leaders, if you ever have a chance to say thank you to them, let them know. It's amazing when somebody comes and says, gosh, I really appreciate how much you've been an influence in my world, whether it's an aunt or an uncle, maybe it was a child, maybe it's a neighbor. You know, it's amazing to be aware of how you do influence others, whether you know it or not. Now what I'd like us to do is share what type of leadership positions have you been in or are you currently holding, maybe as a manager or business owner. If you're a parent, that is a very important role as a leader. So I'd like you to, again, jot down in the chat box all the different types of leadership positions that you have or are holding. Maybe you've been a teacher in school. Maybe you've been a coach. Maybe you've been a youth leader or a church leader. Maybe you are a chair of a committee or a team. Maybe you've been a team captain of a project. All right. So as they start to come in, I can see Sarah's been a teacher, church leader, team captain. We've learned, or Debbie, assistant manager and case manager. All right, great. So regardless of the title, I want you to now think about what is your responsibility in those positions like golf. So Links to Leadership looks at, we did some research on successful golfers and successful leaders, and we boiled it down into the fact that they both manage par. PAR, by the way, is an acronym, but in the game of golf, PAR is the term that's used as the target for the score of each hole or each round. And PAR in our application today stands for managing your people, managing attitudes, and resources. So let's take a look at managing people. The next part in the handout, if you're taking some notes, is to take a look at the relationships that you have as a leader. And in golf, there is someone referred to as a caddy. The role of a caddy is someone who follows the round of golf with the golfer and provides support, gives advice, and coaches that golfer for improved performance. Pictured here is one of the famous caddies of all time, Butch Harmon. And I had the privilege of golfing with a caddy in Coeur d'Alene. And it was amazing because a caddy has a great ability of looking at your performance or observing your score or your actions and then making appropriate suggestions or recommendations based on the situation. And I had a great score that day. I think it was not only because he gave me great advice, I think he helped me with my confidence. So I'd like for you to either type in or write in on the handout, who is your caddy? I think of my caddy as my team, Inspiring Solutions team. I appreciate their insights. I appreciate them giving me direction as a leader and as a business owner. I also think of my clients as my caddies. I also have advisors. I have a financial advisor. I have an accountant. I have a legal, an attorney. All right, so who are your caddies? And you could have more than one. The second is to identify who are your fans. All golfers, all teams have a fan club. And these are folks that are oftentimes watching you along the sideline. They're cheering your success. They might be criticizing your failures, but they are genuinely interested in your performance. So again, I want you to either type in the chat box or on your handout, who would you consider your fans? I would think of not only our past clients, because I think of past clients that we've done work with as a great ambassador for giving us endorsements or making recommendations to other clients. Our current clients are obviously giving us direction and helping us perform in a way that meets their expectations. And so again, these fans, and I like the idea, somebody said my husband and sister. So it could even be somebody in your personal life. You know, I think of my parents, although deceased, they were my primary fans. And then the last part of this section, I'd like for you to think about what if your fans were to write you a letter or fan mail, how would they describe you? I'd like for you to be aware of your role as a leader. If you're not, we're going to be doing a program on leadership towards the end of the year. I think it's December. And you can actually use an assessment for your skills as a leader. But I'd like for you, for at least today, identify what would they say your skills as a leader would be. And there's 3 lines there that you can fill in. I get feedback off of the evaluation forms that people, at least in my class, feel as though I'm inspiring, I'm enthusiastic, I'm knowledgeable. Words they oftentimes say is I'm practical, yet I'm also challenging. So think in terms of what they would say about you as a leader. What would you like them to say? One of the skills that I am working on as a leader is my skill to listen. I know that I could do a better job of listening and truly understanding what someone is saying. So I've got some work to do in that area, but I would love to get that feedback that I'm a good listener. That covers the managing people expectation or aspect. Now we're going to move on to the next page on managing attitudes, managing your thoughts and action. And I want to credit Sarah, who's been our summer intern, for designing this page. I said to her I wanted to have something that I can use for the participants to write down the 18 leadership lessons on and off the golf or on and off the links, and she designed a little golf course for you. So you can write down some notes of the 18 lessons I'm going to share with you. First of all, knowing whether you're thinking about the game of golf or you're thinking about work, I'd like for you to think in terms of aspects of performance. There are results, there's other people's reactions, whether it's your own, your fans, your teams. You have behaviors, thoughts, feelings, values, and beliefs that all influence your performance. So with that in mind, let's take a look at the first lesson. The first lesson is to understand the game. So in that box, you write down the word game. And I put that in quotes intentionally because I'm thinking about game of golf. So the game of golf, the purpose is to, again, in 18 holes, shoot the fewest number of strokes to get the ball into the cup. There's a variety of different rules in the game of golf. For instance, if you were to hit the ball in the water, you have a one-stroke penalty. If you hit it out of bounds, you have to re-hit from your, not only a one-stroke penalty, but hit again from the same location. So in the game of work, you probably have a job description. You might have a mission or a vision statement that defines what your purpose or objective is. At work, you probably have policies, procedures, ground rules that keep you performing in a congruent manner. Then the second lesson learned is to obtain the proper resources. Now, we're going to talk about this in the third aspect of PAR, but I do want to at least acknowledge that in this lesson, you want to think about what are your tools and equipment, and what are the people and the experts that you need to maximize and utilize. Number three, coming straight from Carnegie Hall. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. I think professionals have earned their marks because of their dedication to practice. Good practice brings good results. Bad practice or no practice brings bad results. So as a golfer, it's very common to spend time on the driving range, working on each type of club that you might use or your swing. As a leader, I commend you on making the time or taking the time today to participate in this webinar. This is a way that you are practicing in a safe environment and learning to increase your knowledge and effectiveness as a leader. Arnold Palmer, a champion professional golfer, said it's a funny thing. The more I practice, the luckier I get. He might refer to it as luck, but I truly believe that it's because he's committing the time and making the time to practice. Lesson number 4, in the spirit of you Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts out there, I was a Girl Scout, and the motto of Boy Scouts is to be prepared. I think one of the reasons that I like the challenge of the game of golf and maybe the game of leadership is that mental toughness. One of the things that you might hear a professional golfer talking about their day, either before or after a round, is they're concerned about their short-term memory. And having lost a mother to Alzheimer's, I really didn't know what that meant. But what it means is that to what degree are you willing to let go of the past? From either something that was good or bad. So in other words, if you get a little cocky thinking that you're in a good position personally or professionally, you're not humble. If you are in a bad situation, you might not be able to overcome the strength or the challenge. So it's the mental toughness as well as the physical toughness of the game. Number 5, I actually wrote about in my book, Attitude, the Choice is Yours. It's a attitude adjustment called Listen to Your Self-Talk. That means 2 things. One is listen to yourself communicating with others. So as a leader, are you inspiring? Do you sound inspiring? I had to give a leadership team I was working with earlier this week because they just were like pulling mud to get them to participate. And I thought, gosh, you guys, I'm going to give you some feedback. If you were my leader, I wouldn't really be very excited because you don't sound, you don't even look excited. So you've got to be a little bit of a coach to your team. The other aspect of self-talk is a voice within, referred to as self-talk. And Henry Ford said, if you think you can or if you think you can't, either way, you're right. You may be familiar with the movie called Tin Cup. And the character played by Kevin Costner was challenged with the last shot of the round with a water feature in front of the green, and he put the first ball in. He the second shot persistently, but again, he believed that he was going to be able to do it and eventually did. The 6th lesson actually learned from the late, great Stephen Covey in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and that is to begin with the end in mind. What that means is your ability as a leader to visualize your desired end results. So in other words, if you are going to be working on a project, if it's a project that you're going to work on by yourself, or if you're going to be working on it with a team, you need to be able to articulate or even involve the team in creating an understanding of what the end product is going to look like, because by doing so, you're going to be much more efficient and effective in getting there. Your desired future. So as I think about defining the end result, I'd like for you to think about what are the measures that tell you you're successful. In the game of golf, it's the number of strokes. In the game of bowling, for instance, it's the number of pins you knock down. So in work, it might be your sales volume or the number of different sales you make. It could be the timeliness of meeting deadlines. It could be feedback from your customer, whether it's internal or external, whether you refer to them as patients or clients or customers, internal as well. Feedback from your employees on their satisfaction or their retention, and the overall financial impact on your performance. So these are measures of your success. The 7th lesson learned on and off a golf course is to have the ability to trust the process and the people. For instance, I was working with a client who is rolling out a process improvement using a methodology called PDCA, or Plan, Do, Check, Act. And one of the things that it's important is to test or to trust that methodology, because that methodology, learning how to plan a project and do something that's going to improve the outcome, and then check back to make sure that it's working, and then act to make any refinements, works. So you don't have to recreate the wheel. And then the people aspect is, if you hire right, last month, I believe we did a webinar on a new tool called PXT Select. And it's a tool that we're helping our clients now use to make a good selection decision. And if you're interested, let us know. We'll be happy to give you an exposure and even an introductory offer for it. But we believe that if you make a good decision on the front end and hire good people that fit into your team and in your organization, they will help you to achieve your desired outcome. And if you believe it, you can achieve it. Lesson number 8, keep an honest score. One of the things that I've always been humbled by is my mistakes. In fact, you'll hear me talk about the fact that mistakes are truly indications of your success, and if you use them, they can help you to overcome difficulties. And I learned this in the game of golf. If you cheat, I'm sure your teammates know, and why not be honest with yourself and others? Paul Harvey, for those of you who know the game of golf, said that it's a sport where you yell 4, which means get out of the way, shoot actually 6, but you write down 5. And I'm a true believer that it will catch up to you one way or the other, on and off the golf course. Honesty is always the best policy. Number 9, this one I'm going to give credit to my coach, high school coach, Durhammer. He practiced focus, focus, focus. What that meant was, and Johnny Miller said, don't worry about how good or bad your last shot was. Focus on the current shot. So what that means in work is don't worry about how good or how bad yesterday was. You've got a fresh start at making the most or the best out of a day, out of a meeting, or out of a relationship. So to apply that, one way to do that is to take a look at your current situation. What do you do best? What are the challenges that you're currently facing in your job, in your team? And then what or who can impact that situation, either from a positive perspective or from a detriment perspective. And just kind of being aware, as my counselor, my coach says, that's one of the ways that you can improve your future. Number 10 is to monitor and evaluate progress. Learn from your mistakes. In other words, learn what you're doing wrong and make corrections and refine your strategy. Let me interrupt here for a second. Is anyone having difficulty in hearing me? Well, I guess if you're not hearing me, you won't be hearing this. I guess I need a confirmation. If you would hit a yes in the chat box to let me know if we're having any technical difficulties before I go further. So if you're hearing this, type yes. All right, looks like it is. Thank you for that confirmation. And again, I'm humbled. If we're having technical difficulties, I want to know it. So, lessons learned from last year. What worked, what didn't, what was the best decision that you made, what did you learn about yourself, your market, or your product? We are constantly revisiting our progress and looking at what as a team we're doing well, how could we improve our efficiency, our effectiveness, what's been the feedback from our clients, those that we work with, those that we'd like to work with, and continually to refine our process. Lesson number 11 is to plan your own game. My motto is do what you do best, better than the rest. I'll give you a for instance. I remember one year, one summer, I could not get my woods to work on the golf course. And for those of you who may not know the difference, woods are the big mallets per se, and the irons are the ones that are a little bit shorter in length, and they're intended to use with shorter shots. But I was getting in trouble with my woods, and my golf coach said, you know what, go with your safe club. And that in the game of golf means that go with the iron or the club that you feel most confident with. And so for the 7-iron, I teed off with my 7-iron. I hit my 7-iron in the fairway. I didn't putt with my 7-iron. But my point of this is do what you do best. So if you're creative, if you are good at analytical, do it to the best of your ability and make sure that your talents are being utilized in that manner because you're the most efficient, most effective. Number 12 is to understand what's par. So in other words, now I'm going to use the golfing term. Know what's expected from you. We on a regular basis do performance reviews. So we are constantly identifying goals for each of our employees that align with our strategic planning goals, and then they set goals to establish not only how they're going to meet and even exceed those expectations. Number 13, I believe people don't plan to fail, they simply fail to plan. In other words, are you the kind of leader that kind of shows up at work and sees what they think about or what they need to do or want to do? Or do you actually intentionally plan out your day? Earlier this week, I was conducting a class called Thriving on Multiple Priorities. And in it, the principle of planning your to-do list either at the end of your day for tomorrow or as the first to-do of each day. But it doesn't matter. Make sure that you spend about a minute or so each day planning your day. In strategic planning, we use a model kind of like the vacation planning using these 4 questions. Where are you now? Where are you going? How do we get there? And how are we doing? And very intentional steps in the process to answer those questions. But as a leader or even as a professional, you can answer these questions to give you ongoing feedback and make modifications along the way. Number 14 is to learn as a leader that you should never stop growing. You'll see even in the word learn, the letters E-A-R are intentionally read because I think as a leader you must constantly be using your ears for feedback. Bob Hope said that if you watch a game, it's fun. If you play it, it's recreation. But if you work at it, it's golf. So what that means as a leader is it's not easy being a leader. You have to make tough decisions. You have to communicate sometimes difficult messages. But if you are committed to learning and refining your skills, you're going to be much more effective as a leader. Number 15 is to keep things in perspective. This is a creative exercise that you will see one of 2 ways. Opportunity is now here, or in many cases, people first see opportunity is nowhere. 2 ways of looking at the exact same thing. And what this lesson means is to keep the situation in perspective. Things could always be worse. You have people, you know, and I think sometimes you think you can't live with them, but when it boils down to it, a leader can't lead if they don't have a team. Number 16, asking for help is a sign of strength, not a weakness. I believe that those that are willing to ask for help, saying, you know what, I don't know, what do you think? If they're willing to admit their mistakes by saying, I'm sorry. In our 5 behaviors of a cohesive team, one of the behaviors is the ability to establish trust. And I think if, as a leader, you want a team that trusts you, you've got to be willing to be vulnerable, and we talk about and explore that during that program. But I want you to think about, as a leader, who can give you honest feedback. You know, if you want to feel good about yourself, ask your parents. They'll tell you how wonderful you are. But if you truly want to improve, ask your worst critics. They will give you honest feedback if you are approachable and willing to hear them out and not take it offense to it. Number 17. 17 is based on a book from a dear friend of mine, David McNally, called Even Eagles Need a Push. What that means is you need to continue to grow. Do what you fear. Last night we went to the state fair, Iowa State Fair. If you've not been there, it's one of the top 10 must-dos on your bucket list. But you'll see all kinds of things. And someone had a pet snake in a cardboard box. And I don't know what it is about snakes, but I couldn't even fathom being on the same block as them. So my motto is stop shooting on yourself, which means if you feel you should do something, take action. If not, forget it, because guilt will eat you alive if you let it. And then the last lesson learned on and off the game of golf comes from an Italian caterer I met when I was in college. He said, when I was a kid, my father told me, son, figure out what you like to do in life, learn how to make money doing it, and you'll never work a day in your life. And as he patted his belly, he said, "As you can tell, I like to eat." And he said, "I went off to the Navy and became a chef." And I could really, truly tell that he loved the presentation of the product. So he has continued to do what he loves through his catering business. The paycheck is the bonus. Everyone would like to make more money, but if you do what you like, you'll love your job and you'll love yourself. And then the last area in the PAR is resources, managing the tools and the techniques. So the last page of this handout has a long list of different resources in the game of golf. Now, some of you may not be familiar with the game of golf, and so some of these things may not be relevant. But what I would encourage you to do is think about what are the correlations to these different tools. In other words, I need to have certain tools to do my job. For instance, today I'm using my laptop. I'm using the application called PowerPoint. I'm using an application called WebEx to deliver this platform. So those are some of the tools that I need to do my job. A scorecard. We have what's called a dashboard. And on our dashboard, not only do we keep our goals, but we track the progress on a quarterly basis. And depending on if we are meeting or exceeding or not meeting our goals, we use a color code. We use red to indicate that we are behind in meeting our goals. Yellow means we are right on schedule for meeting our annual goals, and the green means that we are exceeding our goals. But that's posted in our work area. Sunglasses, things that you use to keep yourself safe in the workplace. I know doing a lot of work in healthcare, safety is a major component of not only your patients, but of your employees. Yardage markers, range finders, those are things that can give you directional. I oftentimes, when I'm traveling, use my GPS system to make sure that I'm efficient and effective when I'm flying or driving to my location. A ball retriever in the game of golf gets you out of the water. So maybe you accidentally hit the ball in the water, and you obviously can't hit the ball out of the water, so you need a device to get you out of trouble. So what, for instance, if you are in financial difficulties, or what if you are in a customer difficulties, what are you doing to get yourself back? In healthcare, I know many of you I've worked with, you have what's called a service recovery policy. A service recovery policy is an example of when you've messed up, you need to fess up and dress up. In other words, saying you're sorry and doing something to fix the problem, and may even go above and beyond to let that customer know that their dissatisfaction is of importance. Other examples are, again, areas that you can use to have some fun. This is a fun takeaway. For instance, if you wanted to do a follow-up exercise after this webinar, take this worksheet to your team and have them do a creative problem solving with this list and find out what that means to them as far as resources. I'm pausing on this 15th item, pre-shot routine, because I took several golf lessons, but one of the lessons alone focused on our pre-shot routine. What that meant is, what is it that you do before each shot? And the coach said it doesn't matter what you do, but just be consistent. And when I work with groups of leaders, I want them to be consistent and intentional. What that means is whatever you do, do it on a regular basis. Just like brushing your teeth. If you always brush your teeth twice a day, you're going to get a much better result when you get your teeth cleaned. If as a team leader, if you always meet with your team at least on a weekly basis for an update, or in some cases you might call it a huddle, you're going to be consistent in communicating and keeping them informed. Follow-through is another one I wanted to pause. Leaders need to realize people don't necessarily do what you expect, but they will do what you inspect. Through follow-through or follow-up, you need to make sure that you check back to make sure that your team or individuals on your team are doing what you expect. In my world, because I'm traveling and out of the office so much, I actually have to schedule time to meet with each of the team members to make sure that they're working on projects, and if they had any questions or concerns, that I can direct them. Whether or not you're a fan of Tiger Woods, I admire what he brought to the game of golf. He truly heightens people's awareness and interest for the game. But I give you this Tiger's tip as a way of illustrating the value of concentrating. The ability to concentrate and focus on every shot is extremely important in competitive golf. You must have a firm grasp on what you are trying to do, especially in putting. There are many variables to deal with, including the line, speed of the green, direction of the grain, and break. To help block out peripheral distractions, I cup my hands over my eyes. Gives me a telescopic view and enables me to concentrate better. And you may even have seen him do that. What that means to you as a leader is, how are you able to sort out the distractions that you go through in a daily basis, whether it's your email popping up messages, whether it is drop-in visitors that come in unexpected and ask you questions. Maybe it's a customer or a client or a patient that needs your attention. And in what way are you able to keep the focus, as Tiger would say? Club selection and course management. Course management is, again, a technique used to the game of golf. In fact, one of the strategies is to think about how you're going to play a round of golf by just merely looking at the length or the distance of each hole and what are the obstacles. For instance, another application is in basketball. A basketball player will oftentimes visualize the arc of a free throw shot before actually taking it. So in leaders, what I like you to do is think about, what do you want or what do you envision a team meeting to look like? What do you want a relationship with your team members to be like or feel like or look like? My application in a training environment would be, what do I want the students or the class, the learners, to look like when I'm interacting with them? Are they asking questions? Are they writing down notes? That's a very important part to mentally prepare for performance. And then the last example of a resource in the game of golf is par, birdie, bogey. Those are terms that are used in golf as a language of performance. And oftentimes when I'm working with clients, we'd like to give them a language to use. Another one of our significant projects we're working on is creating a sales curriculum. And this client currently doesn't have a platform or we'll call it a methodology to use when in a sales environment. And we recommend that they develop or at least accept a methodology, so when they're presenting ideas or when they're overcoming objectives or whatever it is, you can use as a language. So in closing, what I'd like to have you think about is how leadership is like golf. It truly is a measure of one's inner self, not just of outer strength. In fact, I'm anxious to go to the Solheim Cup here, as I mentioned at the start of this call, in Des Moines tomorrow, because it's professional women golfers. And from my observation is a lot of them aren't very big. They're not strong, but they definitely have the ability of hitting the ball a long ways. Golf, like leadership, it's challenging as well as rewarding. I think there's a great sense of accomplishment when you're keeping score, keeping track of your performance, and knowing that you're improving with practice and repetition. And it does require both a vision. In other words, when I'm oftentimes on the golf course, I'll visualize where I want my ball to ultimately end. As a business owner, I'm also envisioning what I'd like my team or my business to accomplish. I've always believed in integrity on and off the golf course, so whether I'm winning or losing in the game of golf or in business, being honest with oneself. It does take a degree of risk. I have not gotten just one hole in one, but I've actually gotten 2 holes in one. But in order to do so, I remember one time I had to actually cut it close and avoid hitting it into a bunker or a sand trap to do so. And sometimes with risk comes reward. And on an ongoing basis, being willing to identify and resolve problems in the most efficient and effective manner. So if you have any questions, please type them in the chat box for me, or if you want, write them on the evaluation form that we ask you to complete. I encourage you, if you would like, this is a great booklet to not only read yourself, but if you have a golfer in the family, it makes a great gift idea for strategies or professionals who golf, and you can again order them on our online or call us afterwards. It's about a 16-page booklet for $5. The handout that has our training, our program descriptions for links to leadership can be used whether you'd like us to come into your organization, or in many cases, I've done this as part of a conference. In some cases, golf might be a part of a conference, and so either as a pre or a post activity, I've done this as a fun little icebreaker. Our upcoming webinars include, I'm going to talk a little bit more about next month, but in October, we're going to talk about how can you engage today's employees. In November, how to stay positive in a negative world. And like I mentioned, in December, if you're interested in learning more about the skills of a leader, we're going to introduce to you a tool using Everything DISC called Inspirational Leadership. So next month, we send you a special invitation to a Train the Trainer. We held this first in March, and we certified, I believe it was a handful of consultants, internal trainers on how to conduct 2 classes, either as a standalone, or it could be incorporated into your new hire orientation, or it could be a standalone in-service for frontline training or leadership development. The courses are called Staying Positive in a Negative World, and the other is Bad Apples, Coaching Difficult People and Attitudes. Some of you might have even participated in either one of these courses. I am going to be doing the Staying Positive in the month of October, I believe. But between now and the end of August, you can save $100. The registration is only $595, and that includes all the materials, which includes instructions, PowerPoints, videos, even an activity binder to enhance the good, bad, and ugly activities used not only in training, but you can use them in your meetings or in service huddles. It's a great resource to have. If you have any questions, call, or otherwise you can go out and register on our website. And in closing, I do thank you in advance for taking time after you close out of the webinar to give us your comments about today's webinar and suggestions for future topics. So if there are no further questions, we thank you for joining us today. Have an awesome weekend, and in the spirit of golf, go for it as a leader on and off the golf course. Bye for now.